Okay. Welcome to the second day of Find Your Soulmate Challenge. Thank you for coming back. We're so excited to have you here. And this day today, we're going to be talking about communication styles. But before we get into that, let's talk about how it went with you yesterday for doing your homework.
Right. Did you download and print your workbook? If you haven't, you may want to go ahead, look for it. It's in the Facebook guide. And so you can just go right there, print it out. Super important that you do this if you're truly looking for your soulmate and you want a great match. All right. So let's get started. On your homework, let's talk about introverts and extroverts. So who in your family might be introverted or extroverted?
And are you? And so comment below if that was helpful for you to find out that this person you've been working with or living with or having family with is introverted and you're an extrovert, and how that affects your relationship. And then also the next one, as we talked about, if they're visual, auditory, kinesthetic. So comment below, which are you? Did you discover that, oh, I'm auditory, and all this time I didn't know that? That's how I communicate.
Right, right. So, for instance, with our family, when we started learning this and our kids were young, we started using this, and we found out that our son, Christopher, is actually a kinesthetic and an introvert. And so that really helped us to build a deeper relationship with him, because we could talk to him and create rapport in the way that he could feel it. And so that was very, very helpful. We also have a auditory visual son, and that was very helpful for us to know that too. So all these things you can use in your family, and then we used it on each other because I'm highly visual, and that really helped me understand my cadence, the way I talk, the way I move. And then I recognized that Freddie was actually auditory. She's a auditory type person.
Yeah.
And so I drive her crazy.
Yeah, because I'm much of a slower pace and I'm more logical than he is. And it's been really good for our relationship to understand that about each other. And it's just good for all your relationships to know that, oh, they're an introvert. So if I try to get them to go out and party with me, it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for them. Or if you're the introvert and you have the extrovert friends that are trying to do that, and just say, hey, I'm an introvert. It's cool. I love you. Go out and play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you're going along looking for your soulmate, these are the types of things you really want to look at, because our goal for you is for you to be able to understand the person you're with, that you're in love with, having a romance with, and kind of knowing where there's going to be some conflicts and be able to negotiate through that in an easy way. And then there's just some relationships that should not progress into a romantic relationship, because it's going to be a train wreck in the future. And so that's really one of the main things that we want to help you learn profiling.
And that's where the lifestyle thing is so important, because you can overcome a lot of the communication thing about kinesthetic, auditory, visual, and then introvert and extrovert. But when it comes to lifestyle, that can be that's where we see the real problems happen there.
A lot of times it's how you spend money, how you travel, how you take your time off. Your career. How important is your career? Are you traveling all the time? That can be a real difficult thing for your spouse, your loved one, your significant other. It's good to know that, because if that's super important to you, you need to go in, full disclosure that this is what's going to happen.
So comment below if you had any significant relationships that actually lifestyle was what put it into it, because it was just so different and you just couldn't conform to each other's lifestyles.
Yeah. So let's take a little survey.
Yeah, survey.
How many of you are single, new to the dating game, looking for just starting to get started, and you would like a soulmate, but you're really just getting started and trying to figure this out, because it can be a little complex.
So type 1 in the chat and then we'll know if you're single. And number 2 is if you're in a relationship and you're not sure. you've been seeing somebody, you think it might be good, but you're really not sure. And so you're taking this challenge to get some skills to be able to decide, oh, okay, this person's going to be okay for me, or it's a no-go.
So type in 2 if you're looking to have some more clarity in that relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, the number 3,
yeah.
this one's really interesting to us because Freddie and I have been married before, got divorced, had significant relationships and failed. So if you're in that category, type in number 3. We just like to know because we all have the hat, the mug, and the t-shirt.
Right.
Right. So it's a whole different dynamic as you go forward, because what's happening is this is even more important because you might have blended families, you have finance, you have a lot of different things that are much more important now than even a single person. Hard to believe, but it's more complex. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's a little more difficult because you've been wounded, so you're kind of like the walking wounded, and that's something that we also work on in the master class, is how you overcome that, but not dragging your previous relationships into this new relationship.
Right. Or not all of it, because everything's going to follow you.
Yeah, true.
It's just how you're going to deal with it. So communication today. Let's get started on communication. It is so exciting. We're going to add to stream. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Day 2, communication. Let's start again and reiterate this. This is so important.
Yeah.
The big 4. We call it the big 4 because everybody wants it. Everybody needs it in order to have a healthy relationship. Super important. So people want to be seen. People want to be heard. People want to be understood. And people want to be valued. And again, you may not agree with them, whatever, but having somebody share with you and you understanding them is super, super huge. Being valued is really super important. So let's jump into the 4 different styles of communication. So there's 4 different language styles. There's passive, passive-aggressive, aggressive, and then assertive. And then we're going to talk about the 5th language style. And once we go through the other 4, that 5th language style is so important because that is what you're truly going to need to build a long-term relationship. And we're going to go into that. After that, we're going to go into your homework assignments, and then we'll take some questions.
And your bonus.
And don't forget, stay tuned because we have a bonus. It's so incredible. We learned how to do this. What it does is it allows you to never have an uncomfortable conversation ever again in your life. You can meet somebody, I don't care where they're from, whatever, you're going to learn a way to do that. So stay tuned to the end and we'll teach that. Yeah. Okay. So let's get going.
So let's talk about passive. In my past life, I was a very passive person, and I had to learn how to be more direct and open. And what happened as a child, I had a very aggressive mother, and my father was a wonderful, passive, kind man. And so I spent my whole life wanting to be like my dad because everybody loved him, and not many people liked my mom. So she was not very popular. So I spent my whole life being passive in all these other prior relationships because I saw that people like people that were passive. The problem is you end up not liking yourself very much if you're always passive in every single situation.
Right. You're just going along. You don't really have an opinion. Yeah. You can tell if a person's passive. A lot of times they'll look down. They won't have direct eye contact. It's just a difficult world. What's interesting about a passive person is once they're fed up, they can get very aggressive or very passive aggressive. And it's just not a really good strategy. Now, all of us learn different dynamics. We grow up in a family, or we have a situation where, our significant relationship that's raising us they have particular styles. And so we learn these different language styles to cope, to
Yeah.
be protected, or to feel love. And so not anyone is super, super bad necessarily. It's just, it's what we bring into the future as we're having these relationships, and they may not be the best strategies. A
Right.
lot of times, like for me, I grew up in a family where we had these heavy discussions around the dinner table. Um, uh, Sometimes they were kind of inappropriate, I think, for the age level that we were in. But for some reason, it was important that my father challenged both my sister and I, and we definitely had to have some type of opinion. And so we learned how to be a little more aggressive, even though I was a passive person when I was very young. Later on, as I grew up, I learned different ways to cope with that. And much like Freddie, I
Yeah.
decided I'm not Bob. I'm not my father. And so I
Yeah.
kind of went in a different direction. And so, I wanted to be happy with everybody and go along with everybody. But if you put me in a corner, I'd get very, very aggressive and very competitive. And so it didn't always serve me. It certainly wasn't helpful in a lot of situations with my friends. And so, yeah, so
Yeah.
you want to be aware of that. What's your history? Take note how you're going forward. So you want to talk
Yeah.
about passive aggressive?
Well, see, and passive also, I'm sure you've all been in a situation where you've been very passive because you're kind of in fear, and it's like you don't want to have conflict. And the thing that's difficult about being passive is that you don't know how to say no. So you get into all these. That was a big thing for me, to learn how to just say, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Not having to have a big conversation about it. Just, no, I don't want to. So pay attention to people that you meet. Are they passive? Are you passive? And then also, we are all four of these styles at times, because a passive person eventually will either be fed up and they'll become passive aggressive, or they'll become aggressive. So passive aggressive is when you're fed up. Yeah, a passive aggressive person is always planning your demise. It's like, I know it sounds silly, but I'm sure you've had friends and people like that where they're not willing to be, they don't like conflict. So they're not just going to say to you, I don't like that, or that bothers me, or I'd like it to be this way. They're going to not say anything, but they're going to start undermining you. They're going to gossip about you. They're going to try to undermine you at work. I actually saw somebody do that in my workplace. I watched them undermine this other employee, and it didn't end very well. And that's what a passive aggressive person is. They just don't want to be out there honest with you.
Well, the other thing that happens, I mean, I'm sure some of us, or all of us at one point, have been passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I know for me, whenever you're backed in a corner and you don't feel like you can balance the scales, that they're not being fair with you, but you don't have that ability to speak out and say, this is what I need, this is what I want, and put everything on the table, that you can be trying to balance the scales.
Well, then
you're trying to, there's winners and losers, and
yeah.
And you know what, you were mean to me, or you don't know me, and I'm going to show you.
And there's backhanded comments too. I'm sure we had a friend of ours, he used his humor to be passive aggressive. He would say stuff to us that were like, wow, where'd that come from? That was pretty not very nice. And then he would laugh, ha, 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 just kidding. But for us, we were like, no, that was not very nice.
That's not healthy communication. Let's put it that way.
So that's another way some people can be passive aggressive, is that they'll use their put down humor, or say make backhanded, like, okay, we're going to go here, and they'll go, oh yeah, that's going to turn out great.
Right.
Oh, so that'll be wonderful.
That person's not very transparent, same as a passive person.
Yeah.
And so the thing with a passive person is, what you'll see, a passive person will go along. And then when they're fed up, they'll either ghost you, or they'll get very aggressive. Or they may become passive aggressive and then aggressive. Because it's like, your father is a great example. Tell them a story about your father.
My dad, I mean, in all the years that my parents were married, I only saw him 2 times where he blew up, and he was angry for the last 15 years of what he had held inside of himself. That's really unhealthy. And so that was for us as the kids, we'd be going, whoa, what happened to Dad? He got woo. So, and that's another thing. And that's why it's important to know that we are all of these. And it's what we're working on here, what we're training you, and what we worked on for years is how to be able to communicate in a positive, effective way.
Right, right.
So you want to talk about aggressive, since that was your family.
So my family, the way I grew up, we were pretty blue collar. I came up, I'm 3rd generation construction. And so I grew up in a family where I was working very young in life with adult men. And then I became their boss. When I was about 18, I started running my own company and doing all this stuff. And I learned how to be aggressive to try to match their energy. I had to become very aggressive with my father at times because he was such a bulldog. They used to call him Bobcat, actually, and for good reason.
Yeah.
But the other thing that happened to me is because I had low self-esteem, I had bad strategies, and I didn't have effective or assertive communication a lot of times. And so that made me very aggressive, very competitive, not a good plan. I mean, it certainly has its uses at times, but you don't want to spend your life being that way because that really damages a lot of relationships.
It does.
Because it's winners and losers, and that's incredibly difficult. And I feel bad. I want to apologize to my first wife for being so verbally aggressive at times because she was very passive and it was just terrible. And we had a hard time because we were diametrically opposed in our conversational styles and we had no training. And that was really, really sad. And I would say that is probably the number one reason why we weren't able to keep it together. There's always, it takes two.
It takes two.
But
well,
we did the best with what we had from where we were at the time. So let's talk about assertive.
Okay, so assertive. Assertive is where we're all going towards. Assertive is where, because like with aggressive, there's winners and losers. And that aggressive person wants to be that winner. And in order for him or her to be the winner, you have to lose. So when you have assertiveness, when you learn to be an assertive communicator, you can communicate with any style at all because you are going for win-win. And also you are, what I learned to do when I finally got trained enough to learn how to talk assertively is I learned to go, I feel this way. This is what I want. I understand if you can't provide that to me. Let's have a conversation about it. It's you use the I, you don't go, you do this, you do that, you bug me. It's if you use you, then you're accusing and shaming another person. When you're assertive, you just say, that doesn't work for me. And I certainly appreciate your standpoint on that and good luck to you.
Yeah.
Because what it is that's what I've had to do because of my difficulty saying no. Is that when somebody comes to me and asks me for a favor, they want me to be the president of an organization or they want me to do whatever, I always said, oh yeah, sure, I can do it. I can do it. And then I just made myself crazy. And now I have the ability to pick and choose. I go, well, let me think about that for a minute and I'll get back to you on that.
Right. So when you're in a relationship, an assertive person is more transparent. They have better communication. They use I a lot. They don't say you always, you never. Those are big global statements that are, you're just criticizing somebody and it's big generalization and it's very demeaning and can go into a contemptuous place. So an assertive person is respectful and thoughtful, but they have very good boundaries. Mm-hmm. And that's
really what it is. It's boundaries.
You're having good boundaries and you're able to ask for what you want or you're able to say what you don't want. So we want to go into 5th level communication. This fifth level communication is so important in relationships. And the reason it's important is because everybody, as they go into a relationship, you have all this romance, and then you're going to go into the power struggle phase. Everybody goes through it. Nobody gets through a relationship without being unscathed. You're going to have arguments. But the thing with fifth level communication, and we really go deep into this in the masterclass, and this is what helps people stick and stay, make the relationship pay long term, is they're able to hold the space for their partner. Mm-hmm. When conflict happens, you go through a cycle of criticism, contempt, things are said, they're hurtful. Then you get into that defensiveness mode, and then you'll shut down and go into stonewalling. And for men particularly, you'll go into what's called flooding. You'll get so hijacked, you won't even be able to respond. So with fifth level communication, you've developed internal personal boundaries. You know what your baggage is, and you can separate that from your partner, and you can actually hold the space for them. So why don't you tell the story about your friend that does the nails? And
this was very interesting.
Important. Yeah.
So she's a friend of mine, and she and her husband did not have assertive communication or fifth level communication skills, and they've been married a long time. And she was very upset with some of his behavior, and that it was consistent. And she had hinted, and that's one thing: don't hint. Just say it. I mean, so many men get really frustrated with women because women have a tendency to hint about what they want, and not just say, "Hey, will you take out the garbage? Hey, will you quit? Will you do this? Will you do that?" And so she had been hinting about his behavior for a long time, and he didn't get the hint because it wasn't effective communication that she had with him. And so one time they went out, this was for their anniversary, they went out to have dinner, and she said, "I want a divorce." And he completely just sat there and stared at her and had no comment whatsoever. So I was talking to her, and she goes, "I can't believe it. He didn't even respond. He didn't say, 'Oh, no. I want us to stay together, blah, 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 blah.'" I said, "I bet he said that like a few hours after that, or maybe a day later." She goes, "Oh yeah, he did." I said, "Because he was so flooded that he couldn't talk." It was like all this emotion, because this is somebody who's going out for their anniversary dinner, expecting to have this nice dinner with his wife that he's been married to forever. And she says, out of the blue, because he wasn't catching the hints, that she wanted a divorce. And she thought that he knew that, and he had no idea. And because he was so flooded, he couldn't respond. So that was that breakdown in communication. Because we talked, and I said, "You have to give him a chance." He was flooded. He couldn't speak. Let him get it together, get that adrenaline out of his system. So he has to be able to move his mouth now. And he came back. He was like totally stunned. He came back the next day and just said, "What do I need to do to make this okay?" And they were able to save their marriage.
Right.
They were able to save it. It was important for her to know that.
Yes.
Because if she had not known that, if I hadn't been able to say this is what happened, then she would have just filed for divorce and just ended this beautiful marriage.
A beautiful marriage. And he really, really loved her. And once he knew what the issue was, it was easy. It was easier to solve. I'm not saying that all.
They solved it.
They solved it. And now they have a wonderful, fantastic relationship. She's becoming more assertive in her language style. He's learning how to read what's going on.
She tells him now.
Yeah. And so it's those things that happen in your life that can really destroy a great relationship because you don't understand the 4 language styles, and you're not learning that 5th level communication. Right. And it's truly 5th level communication is really being able to communicate under a difficult situation and help that other person get out of what I would call the reptilian brain, where they're just reacting and they're just spewing all this stuff. They're not really thinking through because they're so emotional. but you have the ability to hold that space for them, let them unwind, and then start working through what needs to happen to make it right, what needs to make it happen in a win-win situation for everybody. And it's not always going to be perfect, certainly isn't easy, but it is incredibly important to have this type of communication in your relationship. And that's why we call it fifth level.
And it's kind of like the big four again. People want to be seen, heard, understood, and valued. And by being able to do fifth level communication, you have the ability to step back and see them, hear them, understand. And sometimes you might have to ask some questions and then value them. And that is so powerful in a relationship.
Absolutely. What's so great, as we've been married 29 years, basically as of this date, we've been together 30. We've been practicing all these different tools, techniques that really make our relationship strong. I mean, it hasn't always been unicorns and rainbows, let's say. I mean, the clouds come, life changes. There's going to be things going on in your future life with your soulmate, with your relationships, that when you master this, it really takes so much heat off the relationships, and it actually helps you grow.
Yes.
Incredibly. It's super important in all relationships. So the other thing too, tomorrow, we're very excited to talk about finding your soulmate. You know, what do they look like? What do they sound like? What do they feel like? All these different things. And so one of the things that's super important is, for me, I decided that after my divorce and after my significant mixed family dumpster fire train wreck relationship, that the next relationship that I was going to have, and this was before Freddie, that I had to decide that I was willing to grow. I was willing to learn whatever was necessary to make a relationship work. I was willing to invest with that person and build, that it couldn't be one-sided. Because I had a more aggressive style, I had to really start understanding those dynamics. And I think that really helped me identify a healthy relationship, because it wasn't just up to me to make it happen. I had to identify that person that had that ability. And so when I want to tie this into the different language styles, if you have people that don't have effective language styles and they're not willing to grow and learn how to do that, it's going to be a difficult future for the two of you. You also want to have somebody that's willing to invest in the relationship. It can't just be you doing everything for them, you know, following them around or whatever. And they have to be willing to build on that relationship, because if you're not building it, it's dying. You know, it's going to be a mess. So those are the 4 qualities that you want to think about. I want you to think about that overnight before you go into the 3rd day. Are you basically, you know, recognizing that you have a person that we call a glib? It's GLIB. Grow, their tendency to grow, they're learners, they want to invest, and they want to build with you. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, are you ready for your bonus round? So what we're going to talk about, in your packet, you have the Ford conversation. So print this out, super important. You ever been in a relationship, or not a relationship, you got on a blind date, or you run into somebody, you like them, but it's kind of awkward, especially introverted people. This is really, really helpful. Yeah. So let's talk about it. So Freddie, talk about the Ford technique.
So we'll just talk over it very quickly, and to just let you know, because you have this printout and it really tells you a lot about it. It's a technique to, when you meet somebody, because we have a friend and he says, how do I talk to him? I go out on these dates and it's like, it's dead silence. And we said, oh no, we have the solution to that. And the F stands for friends and family. That's a topic that you can talk about. You get to meet them and you go, oh, hey, tell me about your family. Where are you guys from? Are you new here? Have you moved here? Where's your family? What's your family? Then the O is for occupation. What do you do for a living? tell me about that. Do you like, well, probably don't want to ask, do you like
Whether
your
they like it or
job?
not.
I don't know about that, but you can like just be sensitive. Do they seem like they're happy about their job? If not, then you can say, well, if you could choose an occupation that you would enjoy, what would that be? Because you just want to get the conversation going and be willing to share those same things with them. And then R is for recreation. And that's like, what do you do for fun? Do you hike? Do you dance? Do you climb mountains? Do you ski?
Read books.
Read books. Watch. You love to watch movies.
Go to concerts.
Yeah.
Go for long walks on the beach.
Yeah.
Drink
yeah.
wine.
Yeah.
Enjoy good food. Travel.
Yeah.
All those different things. But what's so great about it is that when you learn how to do this, it opens up the conversation dramatically.
Really easy.
And so then the other thing, the last one is D, dreams.
Dreams.
Dreams are fantastic.
So dreams can be a little touchy because some people go, I don't have any dreams. Okay.
I don't want to share them with you. I don't know you enough.
Well, or you can just say, what's on your bucket list?
That's a good start.
Because what's on your bucket list? Because pretty much everybody has a bucket list, and then that can kind of lead into the dreams. And just know that be willing to share those things too with somebody. That you're going to talk. You're willing to share about your friends and family, your occupation, your recreation, and your dreams, because it can just turn into this wonderful conversation starter. You can use it for anybody at all, and it helps you have a deeper understanding if this person's lifestyle is going to be effective and good with yours. Same lifestyle. Yeah.
Right. You don't want to make it an interrogation.
No,
it's a sharing back and forth,
Yeah.
and start off with easy questions. Like I always go, hey, how's your day going? Well, that could lead into if their work is challenging or it was very exciting. What's the thing you like most about your work?
Yeah.
If you could change one thing about your work, what would that be? It just depends. You just got to go with the flow.
Yeah.
We use it all the time. Any good salesperson in the world will use that conversation as a conversation starter. So it's a great tool for you to go out there when you're out dating, meeting people, doing all these things. To find that soulmate, it's a great conversational starter, and it gives you a lot of depth of information as you go along.
And like I say, we're all selling all the time.
Yeah, you're actually a product and a service, believe it or not, for that person you're going to be in relationship with.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we wrap it up?
Well, let's talk about your homework. So what we want you to do is, like yesterday, take a look around you, identify the people that are in these different language styles, do a self-assessment. What am I? What do I lead with most of the time? Is it being effective for me? How is that affecting my relationships? And it'll really help you go through life.
Yeah.
Go through life.
So if you have any questions or anything, put it in the chat, in the comments below, and then we'll get on the Facebook page with you and answer any questions that you have. And looking forward to tomorrow, because tomorrow you're going to do your
vision board. On day three, we're gonna really identify what your soulmate is that you're looking for. What are your wants? What are your needs? What are your no-goes? We're going to approach it also from a very different way that maybe you've never done it before. A lot of people set goals and go, I want this, they got to be this tall, all these different attributes. We're going to take you on a new journey, a new way that we think is, in the end, much more comprehensive and much more serving to you. So you'll be able to know when you're standing next to your soulmate, that you'll go, oh my God, you're the one.
You're the one. That's what happened.
It becomes very apparent. And so we're going to talk about that. So be sure to show up tomorrow, and we're going to have a great time.